A solenoid point motor like this Pico example is really quite a simple thing. You've got a couple of coils, electromagnetic coils perhaps I should say, that are these round black things, a steel bar that runs in the middle of the point motor and moves backwards and forwards, and then the operating pin which pokes out through the middle of the steel bar. This will go up through the point. Now, to operate this, all you do is put some power through the coil. So if I was energizing this coil, I'd put power through these two contacts here. That will energize the coil and thwack, pulls the steel bar down towards it. Energize the other two contacts and thwack, the steel bar is pulled up through there. So actually, really simple little circuit. But of course, when you see a lot of them underneath a layout, that can get a bit confusing, and I think that's where people get a little bit nervous about the whole thing. So let's have a look underneath the layout and trace the wires, and let's see if we can explain what they all do. For my latest layout, this is the control panel. I've got all the lines represented with strips of tape and buttons to operate all the points. What I want to happen is when I press a button, I want the point to operate. Like that. If we look underneath the baseboard, you can see the point motor in operation. Press the button and it moves across. It's that simple. But there's a lot of wires around there, so what do they all do? Okay, let's trace the electricity all the way around the layout and see if this makes some sort of sense. Starting here, we've got a socket that my transformer plugs into. There's two 16-volt AC outputs on the transformer. The blue ones go to the controller for the track, and the yellow ones go to the capacitor discharge unit for the points. Now, the capacitor discharge unit is this little box in the corner here. What it does is it takes the electricity coming in here and stores it in these honking great big capacitors, which you'll notice I am not touching. And when it's time to move a point motor, the electricity comes out down this yellow wire here, which we'll come back to in a minute, and then this green wire here, and those are the those go to the two sides of the point motor. Now, if we follow the green wire, you'll notice it goes to both sides of all the point motors. This is what we call a common return. So one half of each coil on every point motor is wired up to this one terminal on the capacitor discharge unit. Effectively, that's providing one half of the electrical circuit. You can see that the wire carries on its path all the way around all the one sides of the point motors. Just to confuse things, it's actually a dark green wire. There's a light green wire, which we'll come to in a moment. But anyway, so one half of the capacitor discharge unit is wired to one side of all the point motors. That's a fairly quick and easy thing to put in. Now, actually what happens is the other side also goes to the point motors, but only one coil at a time, because there's a switch involved. Looking at the back of the panel, you can see there are lots of little push buttons that you could see on the front. Now, the yellow wire that came from the capacitor discharge unit goes to one side of each of those buttons. So that's, again, another common return all the way around all the buttons on the control panel. And then the other side of each button, because each button only has two terminals, the other side goes to the individual point itself. So you can see there's a blue wire here, and I can follow that round. It carries on along underneath the baseboard, all the way down to one side of one coil on a point motor, so that when I press that button, the circuit is made so the power goes from the capacitor discharge unit through the dark green wire. Then the other half of the power, so to speak, comes from the other half of the capacitor unit through the button and through the blue wire that ends up here, and it should power that coil there and pulls the steel bar over and operates the point.
And it's that simple. Essentially, you've got two wires out of the capacitor discharge unit, and they each go to both sides. They both go to the coils on the point motor. One goes to one side, one goes to the other. And when there is power in those wires, the coil is energized and it throws the point. You can see there's a yellow wire that runs all the way back to the control panel, and that goes to another button on the control panel. So when I press that button, then that coil is energized and wonderful. What it does is it throws the point. So I can press the buttons and the point goes backwards and forwards. Hurrah! Success. Now, part of the reason it looks so complicated under a baseboard is because what you've got is you've got lots of identical circuits. What each of these circuits is, though, is a repeat of the other one. So you can see this point motor's got a blue and a yellow wire going to the sides of the coil, and so is this one. And they've both got a dark green wire that goes to the opposite side of the point motor. So the reason it looks complicated is that you've just got lots of repeats of the same circuit. But you'll have noticed that there is an accessory switch on top of the point motor as well, and 3 extra wires. What do they do? Those extra 3 wires are all to do with the track power. When you look at the electrofrog here, that needs to be either powered from that rail or that rail, depending on which way the point is set. Now, most of the time, you can rely on the switchblades to do that. When that switchblade touches this rail, it'll make the frog the polarity of this rail. When it moves across, it makes it the polarity of this rail. But that isn't all that reliable. They can get dirt in between the switchblades. What I've done is I've soldered a wire to the track there, and there's an identical one on there, and they take the power from the appropriate rails. That goes down to the switch on the point motor, which is connected to the frog. And that means that the polarity that the frog receives is changed by the point motor. Let's have a look under the baseboard. This time we're looking at the red and black wires. Now on this layout, I've decided that red and black wires are the track power, because it makes it easier to identify what the various wires do if you color code them a little bit. And they come off the main feed here, go into the accessory switch, and you can see there's 2 terminals on the accessory switch which are chosen by the point motor. The output from the point motor, the output goes through this light green wire, and that goes to the frog on the point. Essentially 3 wires, and you replicate this on all of the points. So track power goes in there, and when the point motor changes, the little slidey thing inside the accessory switch, that's a technical term there, will change from feeding power from the red wire to the black wire, and that goes out through into the frog. And that should mean that not only will my locos run, they'll run reliably, because we're not relying on any contacts on top of the baseboard that can get mucky or full of ballast or full of people breathing on the layout or anything like that. And so there we have it. My points doing what I want them to do, which is switching tracks and allowing me to operate the layout properly.